Welcome back to another episode of Bucks Latest presented by Fan Arch. As always, I'm your host, Dean Simon. And before we get into everything, please make sure to leave a like, leave a comment down below, and also subscribe. We are now on the road to 2,000 subscribers. So if you want to join along for the journey, if you feel inclined to do so, please make sure to press that big red button down below. And also turn on those post notifications so you don't miss out on future updates. All right, so with the NBA season now in full swing, 2025-26 is now fully a go. We got an incredible game for the first game of opening night. The OKC Thunder taking on the Houston Rockets at home after their ring night, and the Rockets very nearly spoiled that ring night after a double overtime masterpiece. There was really no better way to start the new year. And of course, the Thunder came out with a win. Then it was Lakers Warriors, and that was an entertaining game in its own right. Luca went nuts. But besides that, from a Milwaukee Bucks perspective, we've already kind of covered everything that needs to be said with regard to the Bucks' first game of the year against the Washington Wizards. And in that same aspect, we've covered Chris Middleton, returning to Pfizer form once again. And it's a little bit of a bittersweet occasion, of course, whenever Chris Middleton makes his way back to Milwaukee. So I figured with kind of the slow couple of news days that have been leading up to the Bucks actual season opener, and we can talk about regular season meaningful Bucks basketball. I figured it would be right to, after the Tyler Smith wave and then kind of like a string of not really eventful uh moments or days following, that we just take time to appreciate Chris Middleton, what he did for this franchise. And I'm going to do so by going through some of my favorite moments, favorite games, or just times throughout his career as a Milwaukee Buck. And there's going to be so many that I just don't have room to include here. I can kind of go along and try my best to from my recollection, go through as many big moments of Chris Middleton's career that I can. But of course, he hit many a big shot, many a clutch shot in both the regular season and the postseason. So it's going to be hard to kind of go through everything, but the three moments following are just essentially my favorite from, this is all my opinion. So the first one that I wanted to talk about was, I forget, was this 2014 or 2015? I think it was about 2015 when the Bucks were taking on the Miami Heat in Dwayne Wade's kind of one of his final years of actually being relatively decent for the Heat before he then left for the Bulls, then came back to the Heat. Um, it was a young Hassan Whiteside on that team, and D Wade, and I think Michael Beasley was still there, like Mario Chalmers. It was, all those kinds of guys going against a Bucks team that, of course, had the young Giannis and Middleton duo, and it was just a fun time. Jared Bayless was on my screen. It was just an absolutely amazing time, and I remember watching this game in Florida, where I was at my grandparents' old house in Florida, and I was with my cousins in a little room, and there was a little TV in the corner, and we're watching this whole fourth quarter play out. And of course, leading up to this last shot, it's the jump ball at the free throw line, won by the Bucks. Jared Bayless goes in, misses the layup, ball gets tipped out. Zaza Pachulia chases it down, just throws it haphazardly back into the field of play. And Chris Middleton, it felt as though it took less than a second for the ball to go from Zaza Pachulia's hands on the baseline, falling out of bounds, to Chris Middleton's hands, and then to the rim for the three that eventually ended up winning the game. It felt like all of that happened in less than a second. But Zaza throws a perfect pass to Chris Middleton, waiting for it. The catch and shoot three drops, and Dwayne Wade comes flying in with the contest on Chris Middleton's shot. I don't know how he got it up over Dwayne Wade's outstretched arms and hands, but he did. He sunk it, and I remember the commentary, "Happy birthday, Jason Kidd." That just got burned in my mind ever since then. And it was probably one of my favorite shots that I've ever watched in a Milwaukee Bucks game. And even for just a regular season, like meaningless game, looking back, it was just such a fun and wild moment, and the roof really did blow off the place. Of course, I wasn't there physically, but um, I don't know if I've ever seen a more hyped moment in Milwaukee Bucks history, other than winning the NBA title, which we'll get to in a second. Than that moment, winning the game on a three, down by two, in the final seconds at home. That was just an unbelievable shot, unbelievable moment, and it was just pure pandemonium. But talking about real pandemonium here is Chris Middleton's Game 6 dagger in the NBA Finals to eventually lead the Bucks to the title, and just this entire series in general, coming back down to nothing. Chris Middleton just turning on the afterburners and really becoming, I hate to say like the alpha. I feel like it's just a stupid term to say that, oh yeah, he was the alpha of the team when they really needed someone to make shots the most. He was their go-to guy. But it is true. Chris Middleton was the guy that the Milwaukee Bucks would look to in clutch situations and just in clutch time in general. And that's just the order of operations, how things would go, just because of his jump shooting ability, his offensive ability in general, and creativity and three level scoring, and or scoring in the triple threat. All of these aspects made him basically the perfect kind of counter option for a guy like Giannis's kind of attack, where Chris Middleton could just hit you with a variety of different moves and avenues of scoring. But anyways, just that series in general, I feel like Chris Middleton throughout that series and throughout his entire playoff career for the Bucks, he doesn't get as much credit as he deserves as for being a great playmaker throughout his career as a Buck in the playoffs. I looked through the numbers, did my research, and I think it was 4.8 assists that he averages for his career in the postseason. And this is, he's had series where he's averaging 7 or 8 assists a game. And he's also had series where he's averaging 9 rebounds, like the one that we're going to get to in a second. But the entire series leading up to this moment in game 6, I was really looking at Chris Middleton as a fantastic playmaker. Of course, the scoring was always there, but just looking at him purely as a passer, I was really, really surprised with Chris Middleton. But of course, when it came down to it, when it came to be crunch time, the Bucks needed a slew of shots to eventually put the Phoenix Suns away and win their fourth game in a row in the finals to come back from down 2-0. The ball went to Chris Middleton, and I wish that's really a shot that I wish I could have been in the building to witness. And man, just looking back, what a time. What a time, what a shot, what a player. Chris Middleton, God, you're something else. Anyways, finally, we're going to talk about the. I say that it's an epic run, but it's really just an epic series because, of course, the Bucks didn't make it out of the first round in 2024. That playoff series against the Indiana Pacers that eventually went to 6 games. I can't say that it was like a one-man show entirely because Dame ended up playing, I believe, 4 out of those 6 games in the series, and he was excellent from a scoring perspective, especially. I think he averaged like 31 or 34 points over the 4 games that he played in the series, something ridiculous like that. But so it was Damian Lillard and Chris Middleton. Giannis missed the postseason that year. Was it a calf injury? If I remember correctly, maybe I'm screwing that up, but I think it was a calf that kept Giannis out. But the keys were given to Chris Middleton, and the entire series was absolutely ridiculous. But really, Game 3, even though it resulted in an overtime loss and a heartbreaker, Chris Middleton hit 2 of his most iconic shots that I can think of. Um, Other than the super deep three against the Celtics in the playoffs to tie the game at 99 at the buzzer, that's maybe one I could have included in here, but again, he's hit so many clutch shots, had so many big moments that it's hard to choose just 3 or 4. But he had 42 points and 10 boards in that game 3, and the Bucks had to come back from down double digits. I think they were down like a dozen points a couple of times throughout the second half, like late in the third quarter. And both Dame and Chris Middleton put the team on their backs. And again, Chris ended up finishing with 42. And the difficulty of shots that he was knocking down, especially in the final seconds of regulation, when he got past Miles Turner and then pulled up for a 3 on the right wing and drilled it to tie the game. Then in overtime, he banks in the 3 to tie it again at 118, before the Pacers end up finishing it on a game winner of their own. I forget the exact play, um, but Chris Middleton really, Is it crazy of me to say that I seriously thought in that moment, and even looking back in retrospect, that that may have been the peak of Chris Middleton's powers as an individual? I don't know if that's that ridiculous to say because, of course, injuries kind of took over very recently and very strongly. So it kind of seems a little bit crazy that such a recent time could have been his peak. And I feel like people would obviously just point to 2021 or 2022. Um, but I seriously thought that that was his moment to show the rest of the NBA that if you get me the ball in a dire situation, I'm going to make something out of nothing and I'm going to do my best to make an impossible situation possible. And that's what he did time and time again throughout that playoff series. And again, just for that game three, I was looking through like the advanced stats of that one game. The usage percentages were just completely insane. And of course, you would rely on your two best players in a playoff game where you're trying to take a 2-1 lead in enemy territory. But so Damian Lillard's usage percentage was 29%, which is a very high usage percentage. I want to say maybe the record for a usage percentage in a season was maybe low to mid 30s or somewhere around there. But Chris Middleton's usage percentage in game three was 40.1% or somewhere around there. It was 40%. Um, that's just completely unfathomable that that a guy could reach that level of usage percentage, especially when it wasn't like the Bucks didn't have a more versatile roster or a deep roster that they couldn't have relied on Malik Beasley or Bobby Portis or not Dante DiVincenzo, and oh my gosh, who am I thinking of? Whatever, but there were other capable scorers on that team essentially. And Bobby Portis did do his thing in that game. I believe that was the game in the series he finished with like 18 points, 17 rebounds. So those contributions were very much appreciated. But Chris Middleton was on fire the entire outing, the entire series. And that was a series where his rebounding took a huge spike. That was the series, I believe, where he averaged over 9 boards a game to go along with 4 or 5 assists and like 24 points on pretty efficient splits. So yeah, that was probably maybe my favorite moment for him as an individual because this was kind of his moment, his opportunity to really go nuts with no Giannis by his side. Maybe he knew and the rest of the league knew that it might not result in a series victory with no Giannis. But that was Chris Middleton's moment to prove himself as an individual that I didn't just get into the All-Star game because I was riding on Giannis's coattails. I didn't win the championship because I was riding on Giannis's coattails. I am my own guy. I am my own star, and I deserve to be talked about in conversations of, if you're giving the ball to one guy with that has to take one shot with 5 seconds left in a playoff game or like a game seven, who you're giving it to, Chris Middleton may be the most underrated answer you could possibly come up with, but it may also get you kicked out of a few establishments if you do say that, at least outside of Milwaukee. But anyways, that'll be it for me. Thank you very much for tuning in to another episode of Bucks Latest presented by Fan Arch. As always, I've been Dean Simon, and before you go, please make sure to leave that like, leave that comment, and subscribe. Also, turn on those post notifications so you don't miss out on future videos. NBA season is upon us, and by the time you're seeing the next episode, I believe I'll be having a Milwaukee Bucks regular season basketball game to cover. So, cheers to that, and happy opening day, opening night, wherever you are. See ya.